Welcome to New Mom with New Life, the show where we unpack the tiny triumphs, the big surprises, and the weird little moments in between that come with becoming a parent. I'm Daniel, your host, part cheerleader, part sympathetic ear, and full-time coffee appreciator. Today we're tackling a topic that sneaks up on so many parents, mom guilt after birth, what it feels like, why it shows up, and most importantly, how to cope without judgment. With me is Sarah, a new mom, storyteller, and fierce advocate for compassionate parenting. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you for having me. I'm so glad we're talking about this. Mom guilt is a feeling I didn't expect to be such a recurring guest in my life after my baby was born. It shows up at the weirdest times, like during a shower, and it's loud. I'm ready to share, laugh a little, and hopefully help other moms feel less alone.
Perfect. Let's start simply. Describe the feeling of mom guilt. For listeners who haven't experienced it yet or who feel it and struggle to name it, what does it sound and feel like?
Mom guilt can be a chorus of tiny accusations. It's that inner voice that says, did I feed them the right thing? Why didn't I pick up that toy 5 minutes sooner? Am I spending enough time with them? It's emotional static, small, persistent, and exhausting. For me, it felt like always being one step behind an invisible checklist. Sometimes it's a single moment of panic. Other times it's a low-level hum that follows you all day.
I love that emotional static. It really captures it. Okay, tell us a story, a moment when mom guilt surprised you, something listeners can picture and relate to.
Sure. One evening, my baby had finally fallen asleep in my arms, that fragile, glowing kind of sleep where you just want to freeze time. I slowly moved to put him in the bassinet, but he stirred. I panicked, told myself I had ruined his sleep schedule, that I had created a clingy baby for life, and then cried in the kitchen for 10 minutes over a nap placement. My partner walked in, handed me a granola bar, and said, "He's fine. So are you." It sounds small, but in that moment, the guilt felt catastrophic. Later, I saw it was a fear of being judged by myself, by other moms, by some imagined standard, not an objective failure.
That's painfully relatable. I can already picture the scene and the granola bar as a tiny miracle. For other listeners, what are the common sources of mom guilt? Where does it usually come from?
There are a few big hotspots. One is comparison. Social media highlight reels make it look like everyone else is breezing through newborn nights. Another is conflicting advice. Grandparents, pediatricians, parenting books, internet forums, each with their gospel. When those voices clash, guilt sneaks in. Then there's the expectation gap, what you thought motherhood would be versus reality. If you imagined being a calm, serene Pinterest mom and instead you feel like a sleep-deprived wizard with a laundry spell gone wrong, guilt moves in. Finally, the juggling act. Work, partner, self-care leads to guilt about not doing enough in any of those roles.
So, social comparison, conflicting advice, unmet expectations, and juggling roles. All of those make a lot of sense. Let's pivot to coping, because naming the feeling is step one, and step two is actually dealing with it. Sarah, what are practical, non-judgmental ways to cope with mom guilt after birth?
I like to break coping into small, doable moves. First, name the thought. When guilt shows up, label it. This is guilt. This is not a fact. Naming puts a border around it. Second, ground yourself in one real thing. The baby's calm breathing, the weight of their hand, or 5 deep breaths. Those facts pull you from hypothetical catastrophes into the present. Third, set micro routines. Even one small, repeatable ritual, a 3-minute tea break, a bathroom door closed for 2 songs, signals to your nervous system that you have a line you can control. Fourth, curate your inputs. Mute accounts or feeds that trigger comparison and replace them with accounts that normalize the messy parts of parenting. Fifth, externalize support. Build a short list of people you can text emergency messages to. I need a 2-minute pep talk. Finally, give yourself an evidence file. Save 3 honest wins each day and read them when guilt swells.
Oh, I love the evidence file. That's such a practical tool. I'm going to steal that as a host trick. Not that I need it, but for science. Speaking of practicality, here's one I use in the parenting world, the 2-minute rule. When you get hit with guilt, do something for just 2 minutes that feels kind to yourself. Stretch, sip water, step outside for fresh air. It doesn't fix everything, but it interrupts the spiral long enough to think more clearly.
That's brilliant. The 2-minute rule is a permission slip to pause. It lowers the bar, which is perfect because high bars are what fuel guilt. The goal isn't to end guilt forever, which is unrealistic, but to create space so guilt doesn't make all the rules.
You mentioned earlier conflicting advice from family and experts. How do you navigate well-meaning critics or advice that make you feel like you're failing?
Boundaries, humor, and a little scripting. Boundaries are simple. Decide what you will and won't take advice on and be consistent. Humor is a pressure valve. A light, "Thanks, I'll try that next time if I survive this diaper explosion," can diffuse tension. Scripting helps for repeated interactions. "I appreciate your perspective. Here's what's working for us now." Make it brief, respectful, and redirective. Also, remind yourself their opinion is about them, their experiences, fears, and hopes, not the whole truth about your parenting.
That's a good point. Others' comments often reflect their own anxieties. Sarah, you've talked about self-compassion. Can you unpack what that looks like practically for a new mom who's drowning in to-do lists and guilt?
Absolutely. Self-compassion is small and specific. Start with language. Replace "I should have" with "I did my best with what I knew." Physically, it can be as simple as placing a hand over your heart and saying, "I see you." Behaviorally, it's giving yourself the same advice you'd give a friend. Rest before productivity, accept help, set realistic expectations. It's also about radical permission, giving yourself the green light to be imperfect, tired, messy, and loving at the same time. It doesn't erase the hard parts, but it changes the interpretation of them from failure to human.
I love the hand-over-heart practice. It's powerful and immediate. What about when guilt centers on more systemic issues, like needing to return to work, or managing breastfeeding challenges, or relying on formula, topics where judgment is often harsh? Any specific coping strategies there?
For systemic issues, community and accurate information are key. Connect with other parents who share your situation. Working parents, formula feeding parents, single parents. Communities normalize choices and offer practical tips. Seek trustworthy resources for factual clarity. Lactation consultants, employment rights pages, postpartum support organizations, not random posts. Importantly, reframe decisions. They're often trade-offs, not moral failures. For example, choosing formula can be framed as feeding your baby and preserving your well-being. Holding that practical truth reduces moral weight.
You said something earlier that I want to amplify. Guilt is not reality. It's an emotion. Can you share an exercise listeners can use when guilt feels like a fact, not just a feeling?
Yes, I call this the 3-column check. On a notepad, make 3 columns: facts, feelings, actions. Under facts, list objective, observable things like baby slept 3 hours total, I ate lunch, partner changed diapers. Under feelings, name them: guilty, tired, worried. Under actions, write one tiny step you can do: drink water, call mom for 3 minutes, or put laundry in the basket. Seeing facts separate from feelings removes the halo of blame guilt often creates, and the action column gives you agency to change something small.
That feels like a mini cognitive reset. Okay, let's get candid. Are there guilt traps that are particularly sneaky? Things new moms often don't realize are fueling their guilt?
Definitely. Perfectionism masquerading as standards, thinking if I don't do this perfectly, the baby will be harmed. That's rare and exaggerated thinking. Another trap is future faking guilt, worrying about choices now will impact the child in 10 years, which is usually speculative. Also, identity shifts. Losing part of your old identity can produce grief masquerading as guilt. If you used to be the spontaneous traveler and now you feel like you failed your past self, that's grief wearing a guilt coat. Spotting these traps helps you respond differently.
I want to highlight that last one, grief in disguise. People don't always connect the mourning of a previous life with guilt. Sarah, what role does the partner play in helping relieve mom guilt, and how can partners be most supportive without being dismissive?
Partners are essential. Support can be practical, sharing nighttime duties, handling bottles, stepping in with baby wearing, and emotional, validating feelings without trying to fix them. The most helpful thing is simple phrases. You're doing great. I see how hard this is. Or, do you want me to take over for 20 minutes? Avoid minimizing statements like, it's fine, or you're overthinking it, because that can deepen isolation. Encourage partners to ask, how can I help right now, rather than assuming. Small, consistent acts of support beat grand gestures.
Great guidance. Before we wrap up, Sarah, what's one lasting piece of inspiration or a mantra you want listeners to bring into their day when mom guilt knocks on the door?
Mine is, you are teaching by showing up. That's it. Showing up, messy hair, burnt toast, tiny victories, models presence, resilience, and love. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. When you live by that, small mistakes become learning moments, not moral failings.
That's beautiful. I'll add another tiny mantra. Small steps, big love. Because sometimes the day is built from tiny, imperfect acts that add up to a whole life of care. Okay, let's close with a quick practical checklist listeners can use in the moment when they feel overwhelmed by guilt. Sarah, can you read 3 quick steps?
Of course. 1, pause and name it. Say out loud, this is guilt. 2, take 1 2-minute self-kindness action, water, breath, or a hand to your heart. 3, do 1 micro action. Write 1 when, call a friend, or set a timer for 5 minutes of rest.
Simple, actionable, and kind. I love it. We're almost out of time, so I'll summarize the key points. Mom guilt is common and normal, but not a measure of your worth. Name the feeling and separate facts from feelings. Use tiny, repeatable practices like the 2-minute rule, the evidence file, and the 3-column check. Set boundaries with advice givers, seek community and accurate information for bigger decisions, and lean on partners for practical and emotional support. Most importantly, be as gentle to yourself as you would be to a friend.
That's the crux of it. If listeners take nothing else, take permission to be human.
Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your stories, wisdom, and humor tonight. Where can people find more from you?
Thanks, Daniel. I'm on Instagram and a little blog where I share honest stories about parenting and practical tips. I'll also point people to postpartum support organizations and local parent groups. Communities make a huge difference.
Wonderful. For our listeners, we'll include links to supportive resources in the episode notes. Things like local support groups, postpartum organizations, and hotlines that offer non-judgmental help. Remember, this episode focused on emotional support and coping strategies. It's not medical advice. If you have medical or safety concerns, please contact a professional. If you have a story about mom guilt you want to share or a coping tip that helped you, tag us or send a voice note. We'd love to hear it.
And if you're in a moment where guilt is overwhelming, one small final suggestion, text a trusted person and say, I need a minute. You don't have to explain everything right away. Help can begin with a single message.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, listeners, for spending these minutes with us. If you found this helpful, please subscribe, share with a friend who might need this, and leave a rating. It helps other parents find a little less judgment and a little more kindness. Until next time, I'm Daniel. Be gentle with yourselves and know you're doing better than you think.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye for now.